In episode 24 today, we're discussing farm business generational transfers from the current owner's perspective. Hi, I'm Norman A. Hood, financial advisor and host of the Exit Plan Show. I interview America's top advisors, like today's guest Bill Circle, to help business owners like you enjoy more freedom, grow your company faster, and retire someday on your own terms. Bill's with Sinago in Macomb, Illinois. He's the owner. He has a master's degree in clinical psychology. He's a licensed clinical counselor and family business consultant. So, for starters, Bill, can you talk about the generational aspect of a family farming operation?
Okay. Just in the last few days, a friend of mine had shared that her father is getting out. This is his last year to farm, and it's the end of 200 years for their family farm.
Wow.
More so than a lot of businesses, farming, it takes a family to get it started. Most farmers today did not just go out here and buy 1,000 acres and set up shop and start farming. Their family helped them get started, and they may have grown the business, but they did have a beginning with the family. Mm-hmm. There is a centennial farm recognition, and that's for those farms that have been in the family for 100 years. And with the development of agriculture, the family farm started when land was distributed. Mm-hmm. So that goes back, to the 1700s in some places, 1800s around here. Mm-hmm. And so that was the beginning of a current operation. So that's been passed from one generation to another, to another, to another. And sometimes people feel an obligation to carry that on, and that can be a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, a lot of times, current owners have a lifetime of experience, mm-hmm. and a lot of that experiences, they've seen multiple changes. When it comes to exit planning, how does that affect their viewpoint?
Okay. Think about a person that's, say, 65 years old. Mm-hmm. So 60 years ago, what farming was like, there were probably a few people still using horses. Mm-hmm. Had steam engines, the old iron-wheeled tractors. Corn was some places still put up on the shocks, a lot of times picked on the ear. Mm-hmm. And within that one person's lifetime, we now have equipment that almost drives itself. Mm-hmm. Farming size has gone from 160, 200, 300 acres to 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 acres. It's become very big business. Mm-hmm. The market fluctuations. Back then they were fairly stable. What took a week or two to change then may change in an hour today. The sheer investments of it, the financial requirements. Most farm operations are multi-million-dollar operations now. Mm-hmm. By the land and the equipment and the expense of producing a crop. Profit margins are very narrow. In order to compensate for that now, they have to increase. That's part of the increase in the acreage. Mm-hmm. So just within that one generation, there's so many changes in the farming operation. And so if someone has successfully navigated that, mm-hmm. They've had to be a very intelligent person. They've had to be a visionary. They've had to be able to anticipate what's coming. They've had to take risks. Mm-hmm. And they've grown this operation. Mm-hmm. And now as they're nearing the end, this is what they've done their whole life. They've grown this, and it's time to turn this over to someone else. Mm-hmm. and step back. And that can be a very difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we work with a lot of pretty successful farmers, and they are very astute business people, or they wouldn't mm-hmm. still be farming. Mm-hmm. I remember in the late 80s, I had a lot of farm clients that aren't with us anymore because of changes in the economy, but they've become more conservative, they have less debt, they're better at managing debt, and they're better at managing cash flow. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And one of the struggles that people have is they treat the financial end of it as a business. Most farmers have made that transition. But the family aspect, the relational aspect, is still treated a lot like the old family farm. And they don't treat it so business-like. So those roles get confused. One of the transitions that this person has to make is he goes from being a visionary to being a follower. He goes from being a leader to being a producer. There's a couple changes that they have to make, and if those family dynamics haven't been worked through, that's a hard role to change. And one of the most common things that happen is when they step out of that role, they kind of take a look at themselves and they say, well, who am I now? And now what am I going to do? And where do I find my value and my worth now? I can't do, or I'm not doing what I used to do. And that can be quite depressing for some people.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's hard to, when you put your whole life into something, it's hard to put the brakes on.
And to build that business, and then all of a sudden now trust it to somebody else. That can be a pretty scary thing. And a lot of times farmers, the old saying is they never retire, they just pass away. And there's some people, they will do that. They are going to farm until they're dead.
Right.
Because they can't let go. They can't make that transition.
Well, you've talked a little bit about roles in the farming operation and what farmers do after they leave a certain role. Now we probably should do a little switch and talk about the difference between roles and tasks, because a role is a leader of the operation and certain tasks come with that. Well, then that role changes. How does that affect the task and distribution of tasks to the others involved in the farming operation?
Okay. The difference between a role and a task is a job that has to get done. It might be animal husbandry. You might have one person that they're responsible for the livestock. Someone else may be in agronomy, so they're responsible for the crops, and they're going to make sure those jobs get done. Roles have to do with the relationships of the people and the functions in those relationships. The leader, it's usually the patriarch, not always. They're responsible for motivating and encouraging and providing that vision for the other people. They're responsible for understanding how those different components fit together and being able to synthesize everything into a smooth operation. It does take followers. A person has to be willing to follow the lead and set back and be a little under, if you want to use that term, the leader. And then so when someone's been in that leadership role and now all of a sudden they're going to pass this on to their children, they're going to give that responsibility, that role to the child, but then they're switching. And they're in essence taking the role of the child in this operation. So it's just a total flip-flop. And so to go from being a leader to being a follower is very difficult for most people.
Right.
They still have all these ideas that they want to do. And so they could become critical of the one that's stepping up, the assumer, the child that's assuming those roles. They could become defiant. In best case scenarios, there's high respect for each other, and there's adult relationships, and the father is able to step back and let the son take the lead and step in when it's needed.
Okay. Yeah, I know some of the farmers I've noticed when they retire, maybe when they were running the operation, they were too busy to check on the cattle or too busy to, drive by and take a look at the crops. But now they're, they still get up early in the morning and they take their time. They go out and look at the cows, but they don't really have any, any tasks that are
they're
extremely
demanding for them.
Yeah, and it's not really extremely vital, but they enjoy it more because they've got more time. They don't have the pressure. That's all been passed off to the next generation. So
some of it enjoy it more. They enjoy that relaxation and that they can be a part of it without all the pressure. Others, they do that as a way of staying connected because they do feel like they're on the outside. And by just going out there and watching and looking and checking, that's a way for them to be a part of and stay connected to that business.
Okay. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up pretty quick here, but what changes or what should change then when the patriarch passes the farming operation off to the next generation?
In general, I think it is easier for children to grow up and have adult relationships with their parents than it is for parents to allow their children to grow up and have adult relationships.
Okay.
And I think that is probably the biggest thing that needs to occur.
Okay. So bring them along as they go, not a big abrupt shift.
But also see them as adults, see them as equals.
Okay.
If you still maintain that parent-child role, which is common throughout an adult, throughout a full lifespan, that's going to make this transition much more difficult.
Okay.
But for the parent to see that child as an equal adult and to have that respect for them and to be able to have those conversations at that level, I think is absolutely essential for a family farm transfer.
Okay. Got that, everybody? We're going to leave you with that. So thanks for joining us. If you want more information about Bill's services, you can check the show notes out and find his contact information there. When you're finished, go to our website. Give us a comment if you have a question, or make sure you come back next time. Thanks.